The phone rang at exactly 7:58 a.m., an unnerving sound that echoed in the otherwise silent office. I had just finished my morning coffee and was staring at the endless pile of case files stacked on my desk. But something about that call felt different. The voice on the other end was trembling, barely controlled. "Is this Mr. Harris, Oliver Parker's attorney?" she asked. I nodded instinctively, despite the fact that she couldn't see me. "Yes, it is. How can I help you?" I replied, adjusting my glasses and settling deeper into the chair. Silence. I could hear the sound of shaky breathing, almost like she was deciding how to proceed. I need your help," she said, the urgency clear. "I'm his wife. I know everything. He's been seeing her. His assistant. A wave of unease washed over me, the implications of her words slowly sinking in. I had dealt with cheating spouses before, but this felt different. There was something heavy in her tone that made it clear this was no ordinary case. I took a deep breath, my mind already running through the possible legal steps. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice more steady than "I'll help you." The silence between us was deafening, and I could feel the weight of her words crushing my chest. "How long has this been going on?" I finally managed to ask, my voice strained but calm, hoping for clarity. She hesitated before replying. "At least 6 months," she said softly, each word like a stone dropped into the still waters of my thoughts. "I've seen them together. She's always at his office late, acting like they're working on projects." I sat up straighter, unable to hide my disbelief. "Why now? Why tell me all this?" I asked, my mind already piecing together the implications. She sighed, a long, shaky exhale. "I can't do this alone anymore," she whispered. "I need someone to make it stop. I need someone to make him see what he's doing to us." I could hear the desperation in her voice, and despite my professional detachment, something in me shifted. This wasn't just a case. It was a person, a woman broken by betrayal. I leaned forward, trying to gather my thoughts. "I'll help you," I said, my voice firm, but not without sympathy. "We'll get this sorted, one step at a time." The weight of her words hung in the air as I struggled to find the right response. 6 months. I had seen clients in worse situations, but this was different. There was something deeply personal about the pain in her voice. "What does he say about it?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She paused, clearly gathering her thoughts before answering. "He denies it, of course," she said bitterly. "But I can tell. I've seen the way they look at each other." I could hear the sharp edge in her voice now, the bitterness of betrayal coloring every word. "He tells me it's nothing, that it's just work. But I know." She choked back a sob, and my heart softened despite myself. "I know," she repeated, more firmly this time, a note of resolution creeping into her voice. "I can't just ignore it anymore. I need you to help me get him out of this lie." I could feel the familiar weight of a case settling in, but this was different. This was more than just evidence and legal jargon. It was about trust, about love, about betrayal. I sat back, rubbing my eyes as I tried to think of where to begin. "All right," I said after a moment. "We'll need evidence, proof." I could hear the shaky breath on the other end of the line, but her voice was stronger now. "I'll get you that. I'll give you whatever you need." As the conversation continued, I could hear her gathering the pieces of a broken life. She spoke of late nights, unexplained absences, and the constant feeling of being left behind. Every word she spoke was a piece of the puzzle, and it was all coming together in front of me. "I found a message once," she admitted, her voice quiet, almost ashamed. "A text. He didn't know I'd seen it." My heart skipped a beat as I immediately thought of the legal ramifications. "What did it say?" I asked, my voice cold and calculating. She paused, as if recalling the moment. "It was from her. It said, 'I can't wait to see you tonight.'" I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. This was exactly the kind of thing we needed to take the next step. "Do you still have that text?" I asked, already reaching for my notebook. There was a long pause before she replied, the sound of her breathing more measured now. "Yes," she said firmly. "I'll send it to you, and anything else I find." I nodded, the strategy forming in my mind. "Good," I said. "We'll get this sorted. I'll be in touch soon. We'll make sure he can't deny it anymore." I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, staring blankly at the cluttered desk in front of me. The quiet was almost unbearable, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. The case felt heavy in my hands, but it was more than just the legal work, it was the emotional toll. I had seen countless cases of betrayal, but something about this one felt personal. I had no connection to the wife, no personal stake in the matter, but the pain in her voice lingered with me. It was clear that this wasn't just about a broken marriage, it was about lives torn apart by lies. I glanced at the photo on my desk again, the one of my own family. The image seemed so far removed from the chaos that I was about to dive into. But this was the job. This was what I did. I let out a long sigh and stood up, walking over to the window. The rain had begun to fall outside, tapping softly against the glass. One step at a time, I muttered to myself. I had a plan. I just had to follow through. I turned away from the window, back to the cluttered desk, and began organizing the files in front of me, preparing to dive headfirst into the mess that lay ahead. The next morning I found myself sitting in my office, staring at the case file before me. It was only a few hours since the call, but it felt like the weight of the world had already settled into my chest. I had promised to help, but now the enormity of what I had signed up for hit me. I rubbed my temples, trying to clear my head. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about betrayal, broken promises, and a family torn apart. I pulled up the text from the wife again, the one she'd sent me last night, and let the words sink in. He's been seeing her for months. I read it over and over, the weight of it crushing me. There were no simple answers here, no easy way to fix what had been broken. But that didn't matter. I had a job to do. I needed to gather evidence, build a case. My phone buzzed again, another text from the wife. I opened it, and my eyes widened at the new message. "I have more. I'll meet you later today." I sighed, standing up and walking over to the window. Outside, the rain had started again, heavier this time, as if the world itself understood the storm brewing. It was a sign of what was to come. There was no turning back now. By the time I met with her later that day, the tension in the air was palpable. She looked tired, drained, like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red, and there was a slight tremble in her hands as she handed me a folder. "Here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I have. All the proof." I opened the folder and began going through the contents. Photos, screenshots, and text messages, all showing the affair in detail. The evidence was damning. The assistant and her husband, both smiling, laughing together, were in every photo. I could feel the weight of it pressing on me. This was more than just a legal case now. It was a life shattered beyond repair. "What do we do next?" she asked, her voice barely audible. I looked up from the folder, meeting her eyes. "We prepare," I said, my voice firm. "We make sure this never happens again. I'll get the rest of the evidence we need, and we'll move forward with a plan." She nodded, wiping away a tear, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes now. She wasn't alone anymore. I spent the next few days combing through the evidence, building a strategy. It was clear that the affair had been ongoing for months, but it was also clear that the wife's suspicions had been justified long before she had the proof. The more I looked into it, the more the affair became a tangled web of lies and deceit. I knew this would be a difficult case to win, especially if we went to court. But I wasn't about to give up. I had to find a way to make sure she got the justice she deserved. But the deeper I got, the more I realized that this case was about more than just the affair. It was about trust, broken promises, and the painful realization that no one is ever truly safe from betrayal. The wife had given me everything she had, but I knew there were still more pieces to uncover. I couldn't help but wonder, How far would I be willing to go to win? How much of my own life, my own ethics, would I be willing to sacrifice in the name of justice? The questions lingered as I sat back, staring at the piles of evidence in front of me. The rain had stopped, but the storm inside me had only just begun. The day before the court hearing, I found myself pacing in my office, rehearsing my arguments in my head. I had all the evidence, all the facts, but something didn't feel right. The affair wasn't just a betrayal, it was a stain on everything. Her husband had lied for so long, convinced everyone that he was the perfect husband, the perfect father. But underneath it all, there was this ugly truth. I knew the wife was ready to take him down, but I wondered if she was ready for the fallout. Divorce cases like this don't just end with a settlement. There's pain, there's anger, and there's a lasting bitterness that often follows. I thought about the wife, about what this would do to her. Would she feel vindicated when it was over, or would she regret it all? The hours leading up to the hearing felt endless. Each tick of the clock seemed to weigh heavier on me. This wasn't just about winning or losing anymore. It was about the lives that would be forever changed when the truth came out. The court hearing arrived, and the tension was palpable. The wife sat beside me, her hands trembling as she held onto her purse, her face a mixture of anxiety and determination. I could feel her fear, but I also felt a sense of strength in her. She had been through so much, but now she was finally fighting back. The courtroom was cold, sterile, with the harsh clinical lighting casting long shadows on the walls. I stood before the judge, laying out the case with every shred of evidence I had gathered. The assistant's texts, the photos, everything. But, as the defense lawyer began to speak, I realized this wasn't going to be as easy as I thought. They were going to fight dirty. They were going to deny everything, twist the truth, and try to make my client look like the one in the wrong. I could feel the pressure mounting as the case went on, but I kept my focus. This was the moment everything would change for her. She would either walk away free, or she would be left with nothing. The stakes had never been higher. The court hearing continued for hours. The defense was relentless, trying to discredit everything we presented. I could feel the tension building in the room as the hours stretched on. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern demeanor, had already warned both sides to keep things brief. My client, the wife, sat beside me, her hands clenched tightly around her purse. She hadn't said a word since we entered the courtroom, but I could feel her anxiety. Each piece of evidence I presented was met with an objection or a challenge from the defense, but I refused to back down. I had seen enough cases to know that the truth always came out, but this time it felt different. The stakes were higher, and there was something more personal in the air. The judge's gavel echoed sharply in the courtroom as she called for a short recess. I stood up, walking over to my client. She looked up at me with eyes full of fear and determination. "Do you think we're going to win?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I met her gaze and gave a small nod, trying to reassure her, even though I wasn't sure myself. "We're doing everything we can. We'll get through this." The recess didn't last long, but the brief moment of silence allowed me to clear my head. I walked back to the defense table, trying to organize my thoughts. But my mind kept returning to the photos we had presented earlier. There was no denying what was happening. The assistant and my client's husband had been carrying on an affair for months. But now, I needed to find a way to turn this overwhelming evidence into something the judge could act upon. I glanced over at my client again. Her face had softened slightly, but I could still see the pain in her eyes. This was more than a legal battle for her. It was a fight for her future, for her self-worth. I had seen this kind of pain before in divorce cases, but something about this one felt more visceral, more real. She was fighting not just for her marriage, but for her own dignity. As I walked back to my seat, the judge returned to the bench, signaling the resumption of the hearing. I knew I couldn't waste any more time. It was time to put everything on the line and make sure the truth came to light. The defense continued their onslaught, trying to argue that the photos and texts were fabricated, that they didn't prove anything. But I could see the cracks beginning to show. Their arguments were weak, based on nothing but denial. The judge seemed to grow more impatient as the minutes ticked by, her gavel tapping on the bench in a steady rhythm. I could tell she was frustrated, but I wasn't going to let that deter me. I knew the case wasn't about the evidence alone. It was about the bigger picture. The emotional damage caused by years of deceit was something the defense couldn't erase with their objections. I turned to my client, watching her as she sat in the witness stand, her face pale but resolute. She had already told her story, but now it was my turn to make sure the judge understood the depth of the betrayal she had suffered. As I rose from my seat, I walked up to the judge and presented a final piece of evidence, the assistant's personal confession. It was a risk, but I knew it was the final blow. The defense lawyer's face went pale as the words of the confession filled the air. This was it. This was the moment everything changed. The judge adjourned the hearing for the day, stating that she would need time to consider all the evidence before making a final decision. My client's face was unreadable as we gathered our things and left the courtroom. I could tell she was trying to remain hopeful, but I could feel the weight of the uncertainty pressing on her. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. I could hear the fear in her words, the fear of losing everything. I paused for a moment, looking out the window at the darkening sky. "Now we wait," I said softly. "But we've done everything we can. The truth is on our side." I could see the faintest trace of a smile on her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. The truth was on our side, but there was no guarantee it would be enough. As we stepped out into the cold night air, I couldn't shake the feeling that this case wasn't over. There was still too much at stake. And as much as I wanted to believe the truth would win, I knew better than anyone that sometimes the truth wasn't enough. The days passed in a blur. I'd spent countless hours reviewing the case, preparing for whatever decision the judge might make. Each call from the office only added to the mounting pressure. My client's situation weighed heavily on me, and I found myself unable to shake the feeling that this case would follow me long after it was over. The phone rang again late one night. It was my client. "I just wanted to thank you," she said, her voice quiet but filled with gratitude. "You've done everything you can." I paused, unsure how to respond. She deserved so much more than what I could give her. "We're not done yet," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's still a long road ahead." But even as I spoke those words, I knew that the decision was out of our hands now. We had done everything we could, but the judge's final ruling would determine everything. I hung up the phone and looked out at the city lights, wondering what the future held for my client, and for me. The weight of the case felt heavier than ever, and I couldn't help but wonder if the truth was really enough to change anything. The morning of the judge's decision arrived, and the anxiety was palpable. My client, the wife, sat in my office, her hands nervously folded in her lap. The waiting was unbearable. "What do you think will happen?" she asked, her voice fragile. I sat across from her, trying to offer reassurance despite the uncertainty that gripped me as well. "I don't know, but we've done everything we could. The truth is on our side," I replied, though even I wasn't sure anymore. The hours dragged by, and the weight of the case settled deeper into my bones. The room felt small, the walls closing in, as I tried to focus on the task at hand. The phone on my desk vibrated, and my heart skipped a beat. It was the court. "It's time," I said, standing up slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. She stood as well, her expression unreadable. We both knew that what happened next would change everything. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door, her footsteps following closely behind. As we stepped out into the cold, the weight of the world pressed down on us. The decision was almost upon us, and there was no turning back now. We arrived at the courthouse, and the sense of finality in the air was overwhelming. The wife's steps were slow, her eyes downcast. I could feel her fear, her uncertainty about what the outcome would be. "What if we lose?" she asked as we made our way inside. I looked at her, trying to offer a reassuring smile. Though I knew the truth, it wasn't in my hands anymore. "We've done everything right. The judge has to see the truth," I said, my words lacking the certainty I wished they had. We passed through the metal detectors, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The courthouse was cold, sterile, nothing like the warmth of my office. It felt like we were walking into a place of judgment, not just for her husband, but for her as well. The uncertainty of the upcoming ruling loomed over us. I could see the anxiety in her eyes, a reflection of my own. As we reached the courtroom, I felt the full weight of what was about to unfold. The wife stood beside me, her gaze fixed forward, though I could tell she wasn't seeing anything at all. We were both lost in the moment, waiting for what would come next. We sat in the courtroom, waiting for the judge to enter, and the silence between us felt deafening. The wife kept shifting in her seat, her hands clenched in her lap. "What if she doesn't believe us?" she whispered. I could feel the panic rising in her voice, and I turned to her, trying to offer comfort. "She will. We have the evidence," I said. But even I wasn't sure anymore. The courtroom was full of spectators, the air thick with the murmurs of people whispering about the case. I tried to focus on the task at hand, but my mind kept returning to the photos, the texts, the undeniable proof of betrayal. The defense had tried to discredit everything, but I couldn't let their lies overshadow the truth. I knew the judge would have a hard time ignoring the overwhelming evidence. Still, doubt gnawed at me. Would it be enough? Would the truth win out? I glanced at the wife, who was now staring straight ahead, her jaw clenched in determination. Whatever the outcome, I knew that we had given everything we had. The judge's gavel echoed in the stillness, signaling that it was time for the final decision. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. The judge finally entered the room, and everything fell silent. The weight of the moment settled over us like a heavy blanket. The wife reached out and squeezed my hand, her fingers trembling. I looked at her, trying to offer a silent promise of support, but I knew there was nothing more I could do now. The judge sat down, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the case files before her. The tension in the air was palpable, every second feeling like an eternity. My heart raced as she began reading her decision aloud, each word feeling like it was dragging me deeper into the abyss. "The court finds the defendant, Oliver Parker, guilty of infidelity," the judge said, and a wave of relief washed over me. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. The wife's face softened slightly, though there was still a long road ahead. The judge continued, outlining the terms of the divorce and the custody arrangement, but I barely heard the rest. The important part had been decided. The truth had won. As we stood to leave, I could see the faintest glimmer of relief in the wife's eyes. This chapter wasn't over, but the first step had been taken. As we left the courthouse, the weight of the decision began to sink in. The wife's face was unreadable, but I could sense her relief. "It's not over yet," I said quietly, trying to keep her grounded. "But we've made progress." She nodded, her expression softening slightly. "I know," she replied, her voice quiet. "But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe." We walked out into the sunlight, the harsh brightness of the day contrasting with the darkness of the courthouse. The world outside felt different, somehow lighter, as if the weight of the past few days had been lifted, if only for a moment. We walked in silence for a few blocks before I turned to her. "You did the right thing," I said. "You took control of your life again." She smiled faintly, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." I smiled back, though I knew that the journey was far from over. The case was a step toward healing, but the true work would come in the months ahead. Still, for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we had turned the page. It's been weeks since the court ruling and things have started to settle, but the weight of what happened still lingers. My client, her name is Emily, has started to rebuild her life, but there's an undercurrent of grief that won't leave her. Despite the victory in court, there are scars that remain. We meet occasionally, her telling me about her new apartment, her small victories in regaining her independence. Yet each time she speaks, I can hear the hesitation in her voice. I know the process is slow, but I also know that she is finally starting to heal. Today, as I sit across from her in a small cafe, I can sense her hesitation again, It's hard, you know, she says, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. I thought I'd feel free, but instead it's like I'm just lost. I can see it in her eyes. There's still a part of her that hasn't moved on from the betrayal, and no matter how much I reassure her, there's no easy fix for the emotional toll she's endured. Healing isn't linear, I say softly. It takes time, but you're doing it. You've already taken the hardest step. She nods, though there's no conviction in her response. But I know her better now, and I know that she'll make it. Slowly, she'll make it. A few days later I meet with Emily again, but this time, the setting is different. She's invited me to her new apartment, a small but cozy place that already feels like home. The clutter of moving boxes is gone, replaced by new furniture and fresh plants that give the place a sense of life. I've been working on this for a while now, she says, leading me into her living room. The warmth of the space is in stark contrast to the cold, sterile courtroom she had been forced to inhabit only months ago. As I sit down on the couch, I take in the newness of it all. She's clearly settled in, and for a moment, I see a glimpse of the woman she was before all the chaos. I never thought I'd be able to do this, she admits, sitting next to me, her eyes scanning the room. It feels like I'm finally taking control of my life. I nod, knowing this is her first real step toward reclaiming what was taken from her. It's a new chapter, Emily, I say gently. And you're writing it, not anyone else. She smiles for the first time in what feels like forever, and I can see the tiniest spark of hope return to her eyes. Over the next few weeks, Emily begins to show signs of moving forward. She starts a new job at a small design firm, something she's passionate about. I hear about her triumphs and struggles, but more than anything I notice a shift in her demeanor. She's laughing more, her eyes brighter, and there's a confidence in the way she carries herself. One evening, as we sit together after work, she turns to me and says, "I'm starting to feel like myself again." I smile, though I know it hasn't been easy. "You always were yourself, Emily. You just needed to remember that." She laughs, and the sound is genuine this time. We sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set outside. The warmth in the room reflects the transformation I've seen in her. There's a peace settling over her now, though the scars of her past will always remain. The emotional toll has been immense, but I know she'll carry it with strength. I'm proud of her. "Thank you for everything," she says, her voice steady. "I wouldn't have made it without you." I shake my head. "You did it yourself. I was just here to help you see it." The smile she gives me says everything. She's finally free. Months have passed, and life has started to fall into a new rhythm. Emily and I have had fewer meetings, her life slowly becoming her own again. One day, she calls me to ask if we can meet. When I see her at the cafe, she's dressed in a sharp new outfit, her confidence radiating. "I have something I want to share with you," she says, her eyes bright. We sit down, and she pulls out a small folder, handing it to me. Inside are the divorce papers, finalized and signed. She's free. "I'm moving on," she says, her voice filled with both relief and resolve. "It's done." I look at her, a quiet pride filling my chest. "You did it," I say softly. "You're free." She nods, her eyes glistening with tears that she doesn't try to hide. "It was hard," she admits, "but it was worth it." I smile and nod, knowing that this moment is just one of many in her journey. She's finally taking control, not just of her life, but of her future. She stands up, offering me her hand. "Thank you," she says, her voice firm with gratitude. "For everything." I shake her hand, knowing that she'll be okay. She's found her strength again, and that's all that matters now. A year has passed since the final court decision. I sit in my office, flipping through the case files one last time, putting everything to rest. Emily has moved on. She's thriving in her career, her life full of new beginnings and possibilities. She sent me a card the other day, one that simply said, "Thank you for helping me reclaim my life." I've heard about her new relationship, a healthy, supportive one this time. I smile, knowing that this chapter has finally closed. The past is still there, lingering in the background, but it no longer defines her. I think back to that first day she walked into my office, fragile and broken. It's incredible to see how far she's come. I close the case file, leaning back in my chair. The work isn't always glamorous, but moments like this remind me why I became a lawyer in the first place. It's not just about the legal victory. It's about helping people rebuild their lives, and that's a victory in itself. It's been a few months since Emily's victory. I received an invitation to her housewarming party. She's settled into her new life, surrounded by friends and family, the weight of her past finally lifting. I arrive at her place, a warm, inviting atmosphere greeting me. She opens the door with a smile that reaches her eyes. "You made it," she says, her voice full of joy. We chat, laughter filling the air. "This is it," she says, taking a deep breath. "This is my new start." I watch her, proud of the woman she's become. The scars are still there, but they're no longer visible. "You've done it, Emily," I reply. "You've reclaimed your life." As the night progresses, I watch Emily move with ease among her guests. She laughs freely, the weight of her past no longer holding her down. I find myself observing her from a distance, marveling at how far she's come. "You're free," I whisper to myself. She approaches and I stand to greet her. "It's all come together," she says, a sparkle in her eye. "I never thought I'd get here, but now it feels like I'm exactly where I need to be." I smile, proud of her resilience. "You earned this," I tell her. We share a quiet moment before she's swept away by more guests. I feel a sense of closure wash over me, knowing she's finally found peace. Weeks pass, and I receive a call from Emily. She's been seeing someone new, someone who treats her with respect and care. "I think he's the one," she says, excitement in her voice. I can hear the genuine joy behind her words. She tells me how he's kind, supportive, everything she needed in the aftermath of her marriage. "It's scary," she admits, "but in a good way." I listen, relieved to hear her so happy. "Take it slow," I advise, though I know she's ready. She's stronger now, no longer defined by her past. "You deserve this, Emily," I say. "Go for it." Months later, I sit in my office, reviewing some new cases when Emily stops by for a visit. She's glowing, even more confident than before. "I'm moving in with him," she announces, her smile wide. "It's real this time. I feel like I'm building something lasting." I look at her, impressed by the change I've witnessed in her. "You've worked hard for this," I say. "You've earned every bit of happiness." She nods, her eyes filled with a quiet certainty. "I'm not looking back anymore," she says. "I'm focused on what's ahead." She thanks me again, and as she leaves, I feel a sense of peace. The case is long over, but I'll always remember the strength she showed throughout. I close the case files one last time, knowing that Emily has found her way. She's thriving, no longer weighed down by the past, and I know she'll continue to grow. I look out the window, reflecting on how much I've learned from her. Every case teaches me something, but this story of healing and resilience will stay with me. As I take a deep breath, I hear the phone ring. It's Emily. She's calling to let me know that she's officially engaged. "I did it," she says, her voice full of emotion. "I've finally found peace." I smile, proud of her. "You deserve it, Emily." As I hang up, I realize this chapter of my life as her lawyer is over, but it's only the beginning of hers. A year after the divorce, Emily calls to share her plans for a trip abroad. She's finally embracing her future, free from the past. "Thank you for helping me find my way," she says. I smile, knowing she's stronger than ever. Emily invites me to coffee to announce her trip to Paris. She's excited, and I see how far she's come. "I'm finally living for myself," she says. "You've earned this," I reply, proud of her journey to reclaim her life. Emily tells me she's met someone new, someone who treats her with respect. "I'm ready for this," she says. She's finally found love on her terms, and I reassure her, "You're ready." Her journey is about embracing the future. Emily tells me she's starting her own business. She's confident and excited about the future. "You're going to do amazing," I say, proud of how far she's come. She's now in control, building a life she's proud of. I receive a wedding invitation from Emily. She's found love and happiness. I couldn't have done it without you, she writes. I smile, knowing she's found peace, and realize the true reward of my work, helping people rebuild their lives.